Can everyone hear me okay here?
I'm in line.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to start with your first question. I'm just going to ask that you state your name to the minister you're asking the question to, and then your question. I'll hang on to this. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to address Peter Smith for a moment.
Okay, do you want to speak right into the
I'd
microphone?
like to congratulate you as Premier.
There we go.
Put the volume up.
I'd like to congratulate you as Premier of Alberta. You're very... Hey, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Show some respect. Anyway, you're doing a fine job as our spokesperson, and I voted for you. The only question I seriously have is, of course, the water quality when Elkford hasn't been able, to solve the problem, and yet you provide information that new technology. So if a company spends hundreds of millions of dollars trying to solve a problem, what makes you think we're going to believe this rhetoric?
Let me answer that really quick, sir. I mean, there's no question. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, did we even know selenium was an issue? We didn't. Now we know it's an issue, and especially we know it's an issue because BC, the NDP government in BC, the NDP government in BC, did I say the NDP government in BC? They allowed 6 mines in one river valley. Now, one river valley where they turned the overburden upside down, what if you don't allow anything to run in the river? You don't have to mine at the top of a slope that feeds into a river. There's different ways to mine. There's high wall mining. There's different ways around the world right now, folks. We're not going to let people come in here, billionaires from across the world, and take a shovel and completely destroy our environment. We are not going to let that happen. That's exactly a good point, sir. Where are they going to get the water? That's their problem, sir. Let's see where they come up with it. If they can't come up with a solution, they don't get a permit.
Thank you, Minister. Just a reminder, are we allowed to ask the questions? It'd be nice to hear the response to this. So our next question here, your name, sir?
Dixon Hammond, rancher, Pitcher Creek. Premier Smith, I think it's obvious that the general population here in this room has voted for you in a rural base in southern Alberta. If I may, I'd like to speak about the white elephant in the room, that being the multi-generational ranchers and farmers that depend on clean, abundant water sources for livestock and crops, and our livelihoods. These are the people who voted for you, and it appears that you're favoring this project over livelihoods and future livelihoods. We are currently in spring drought, not a midsummer drought. Why are we talking about removing and contaminating water in a landscape that depends on the biodiversity only to affect the very population that elected you to do so overwhelmingly?
As I understand it, different mountains have different levels of selenium. Tent has a higher level of selenium, which is why we're monitoring the lake that is being fed from some of the runoff. And even there, as the minister said, with a higher level of selenium in the mountain, it's still 1.3 micrograms per liter. The safe level for drinking water for cattle and humans is 50 micrograms per liter. So even in tent, where there is a much higher selenium content, it's still well below the impact that it would have on human health and animal health. When it comes to grassy, they've got a much lower selenium level, but I think what Brian is saying is that if you don't do the disturbance, the mountaintop removal, and you don't end up with that weathering, it's the wet and then the drying and the wetting and the drying, that causes the selenium to go into the river system. If you don't do that kind of mining, you're going to be able to mitigate. But there are also ways that you can use. You can direct water runoff into a channel so that you're able to avoid it. Those are the things that we're going to expect that the company will do if they're going to get a permit approval. They also just got approval to do some core sampling to see if they can use some of the underground mining techniques. You have to be at a certain depth in order to be able to do that, but they're able to do it in a couple of the other advanced mines. And I'd like to see that process play out, because I think if they can satisfy the concerns that we're hearing, that you're hearing, and that you're saying, then I think that the regulator will take that into account. So I think that what you should take away is that The company has dramatically modified what it was initially going to do because of the feedback that they've got. And they haven't yet satisfied the regulator on all fronts, but we're prepared to allow that process to play out and see what the regulator says.
If I could just add, the study that the Premier mentioned around Crow's Nest Lake, we are being very transparent about the studies and the data that we have. Premier has that expectation that the information that we gather is online, but it's also then being used to form our policies. And so I do want people to know, and what Premier said is completely accurate, the average selenium concentration in Crow's Nest Lake was 1.6 micrograms per liter, while the Canadian drinking water standard is 50 micrograms per liter, and for irrigation it's 20 micrograms per liter. Now, the fish tissue study, we did release that. We are being transparent. This shows how seriously that we take that. And now additional work, I'm just going to say, given the low levels of selenium in the water, additional work is being done to determine, and it hasn't yet been peer reviewed. We want that process to happen, and we want to understand what is happening there so that we can prevent that happening in the future. That study was funded by government. It was conducted by government researchers. It's still in the peer review process. Once we have that, we'll make sure that that data is transparently shared as well, so that there is confidence in both our monitoring and testing, but then the regulations that we have in place, and the transparency and how seriously we take that issue.
That's why you And if I can just say this, folks, just to add to that, you know, one of the things we've discovered listening to scientists and experts is that, you want to hear it or not? What we've learned is that selenium affects the reproductive rate and the reproductive ability of fish, of different species. But then our scientists went in and checked out all the species that were in the lake. And they're all years. All years. Infant. So it's not, that's why we're continuing to study, folks, because we can't see the evidence that it's causing problems with the reproduction of fish. So we need more evidence, and we're doing that. And that's what your government does, is to keep you safe. We continue to monitor, continue to listen to the experts, and continue to get evidence.
All right, thank you guys. Sorry, your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Aurora. I'm from Pinch Creek MD, and my question is for Danielle Smith. I'm just an immigrant like any other white person here in this room. The land acknowledgement that was never spoken, I had to demand a land acknowledgement. Like, it's very simple to understand then why it's not trustworthy to talk about water quality, protecting the land, environmentalism, if we do not acknowledge the land. And the Picani elders have met at the Crow's Nest Lake for a ceremony, and they are not being invited here.
Sure, your 30 seconds is almost up, please. Thank you.
I'm done. I got my message through.
Thank you. Any comments in regards to this?
It was to the Premier there.
Well, folks, I have a large, I don't know if anybody's related to more Indigenous folks than me, but I'm sure there's a couple. Yeah, you can laugh all you want, folks, but my family is Indigenous up in northern Alberta. Treaty 8, 3 different reserves, and I thought I did in land acknowledgement. Now, I will tell you that I may not be the most, incredible speaker with words on land acknowledgements, but I thought I clearly indicated that I'm proud of where we're from, I'm proud of our history, I'm proud of our Indigenous First Nation and Inuit families and friends, and I'm proud of my family. I hope you're proud to be part of that family too.
Thank you so much. Your name and your question.
Government-funded study about fish tissue selenium concentration, and I just think that, I feel like we all probably know, but the study was published less than a month ago in May 2025, and they found an average of 18 micrograms of selenium concentrated in fish tissues. And I don't know if you missed this in the article, but the authors warned that any further mining developments in the region could push the crow's nest fishery beyond saving. So clearly whatever protection plan was put in place was not followed. And how are we supposed to trust a government that continuously doubles back on its word? And do you feel as though allowing a mine project to proceed sends a message to Albertans that you prioritize foreign investors over Albertans' physical and spiritual health and wellness?
And just so you know, so the 105 fish that were sampled from 3 different species, it ranged from 9 to 18 micrograms per gram. So yes, that was above the fish guidelines, and that was where health made that guidance out of precaution while that study is still being peer reviewed, and there is additional information that they are looking for to ensure that we understand what needs to be done to move forward. And I would just say, I mean, that is how much that we value transparency. We published that report. Absolutely. Still work left to do, and it still has to be peer reviewed. And so, yes, and that would be my criticism, is let's wait for the remainder of the information. It has to go through that peer reviewed process that scientific research is required to go through. But I do want to be clear. There were 5 new studies that were funded since 2021. 3 are complete and published. Another one's coming this year. 1 additional study expected to be released next year. And we've been very transparent about that. And I hope that instead of picking and choosing and cherry picking information, that we look at that information and then look at how government is using that information to drive policies both in environment and in the coal modernization initiative. We do take that data seriously, and I know Premier feels the same way that I do. When government funds studies, that information should all be public, transparent, and available to Albertans.
But as I mentioned, this body of water was impacted by Tent Mountain, and Tent Mountain is not going ahead as a coal mine. It's going ahead as a pumped water project with wind pumped water. So they're doing it so you should be happy that they've changed gears on that one, because that's exactly what you're asking for. It's more of a different project to go there, and that's what they're doing.
You missed my point.
Listen, folks, there are zero mines planned upstream of Crow's Nest Lake. 0. So there's nothing on the book. So Crow's Nest Lake, not an issue.
Yeah, right.
The other ones don't have any evidence of selenium like this. Like, folks, some parts of the province don't have any issue of selenium whatsoever. Some do, some don't. That's why this has to be dealt with properly. And as the minister said, we have to manage it properly, just like we have to manage the amount of selenium in water.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to kindly remind, we have about an hour left, so I appreciate those people who are keeping their questions to 30 seconds and keeping them clear and concise. Your name and your question, please.
Bob Costa. I live 17 kilometers directly downwind of Grassy Mountain. I've been in this fight for 7 years, and my issues around it are many, but I'm bringing this question back to a personal level. My wife and I have been in that location for over 40 years. We've enriched the soil constantly to grow a garden that feeds us year-round. And now, with the advent of the potential development of Grassy Mountain and all of the air dispersion caused by the dust that I don't care who it is, you're not going to control all that dust in the windiest part of North America. Do we, the common people, not measure up to the Alberta government the way foreign investors do?
That is a good question. And in my opening remarks, I know we talk a lot about water, but I did also mention that we do have air quality monitoring as well. And we do more of this in Alberta than almost any other jurisdiction. And we do, and I've seen other projects in place where we do have, I would say, well, of course standards, but also plans put in place. And if those are being breached, I have seen projects be halted, paused, or stopped until that issue is addressed. And so just like we do for water, we do maintain our air quality standards, we do monitor. For a number of projects, I've also seen projects come across my desk that additional air quality monitoring has been required for certain projects to go ahead. Oftentimes that's based on community or neighbor concerns. And so those are often built right into project approvals, and then of course the regulator is expected to uphold that a project is sticking to those standards. In the case that it isn't, and I mentioned that earlier as well, and I can think of this in a variety of different industries, where either a facility is shut down, a certain piece of machinery, if it's found that that is the issue, then that is either shut down or shut down until they can put technology in place to manage it. And so that is how our system works. Our regulators are expected to uphold the guidelines that we put in place, and we do monitoring for that very reason.
That's also why Albertans
I
told
would
us
say
they wanted to have a ban on mountaintop removal and open pit mines, because that will then mitigate against that kind of airborne debris that you're talking about. And it's why we're encouraging companies to look at doing underground mining techniques, so that if you don't disturb the surface, then you're going to have less impact on air, on water, and on the land development. And so that's part of the reason why they were doing the core testing, is to see if they could use some of those underground mining techniques. So I'll be interested to see how that process plays out.
monitoring
Thank you
is
for your
often
question.
too
We'll
late.
have the next person come to the front and just state your name and how are you? How are you? Good, it's good to see you. Do you mind introducing yourself to the panel?
I'm Harvey Dersh, third generation rancher west of here, and I'm really concerned with air and water quality. One question in the back of my mind, we shut down all our coal generating plants here, justifiably so. So we're not screwing up the atmosphere. Now, how ethical is it to send this coal to another country and we don't know how they're going to burn it? Thank you.
Thanks, Harvey.
I would say, just so you know, we have been developing coal in this province for, I think, longer than we've been a province, 150 years. We are in fact the second largest coal producer in the country, behind British Columbia. And we are generating, I think, 200 million a year in provincial royalties. Now, actually, that's only on one project. Oh, wait a minute, that was a coal project that was approved under the NDP. Is now paying 200 million in provincial royalties. The coal, I would hope, would go to Ontario, because I'm signing an MOU with Doug Ford to try to buy more steel from Ontario rather than buying more steel from the United States. That's one of the things that we're trying to do as a country. And we're trying to support each other. So he's coming out here to sign an MOU during Calgary Stampede. And I would hope that when we get approval to build more pipelines, north, south, east, and west, that require 42-inch pipe that are made of steel, that will be steel pipe that is made in a good Canadian steel works, either here or in Saskatchewan or in Ontario or Quebec, rather than importing it from a hostile regime like China, and rather than importing it from a country that we're in the middle of a trade war with. Guys, we have to remember that we are no longer developing coal for burning. We made the decision as a province to phase that out. We turned the lights off on the last one in the end of 2024. But coal for metallurgical coal for steel is going to continue to be a vital product that we need for so many of the products we enjoy, whether it's appliances or cars or tractors, farm equipment, or wind turbines, or solar panels. And I think the more that we can have this industry be Canadian and support Canadian development, that's going to be good for our country.
Thank you. Your name and your question, please.
Hello, thank
Thank you for the opportunity to ask my question. My name is Connie. I live now near Pincher Creek, outside the Castle Parks. I'm actually representing a separate sector that we haven't actually touched on today. I've heard from the agricultural sector and they have valid concerns that I still don't think you're actually listening to. Secondly, the sector I'm looking at is the outdoor recreation sector, which is a cornerstone of tourism development in Alberta. And this government has actually asked for $25 billion in investment return from tourism by 2035. We have right now $2.8 billion of Alberta's GDP from Tourism Industry Association data, $551 million in tax revenues, 336,000 full-time jobs, 76% of Albertans engage in outdoor recreation, 87% want wilderness protected from development and degradation, 98% choose protection of water over industrial development. I have here, I am going to ask my question. I'm with the Outdoor Recreation Coalition of Alberta, who has got 10 major outdoor recreation organizations that have signed on to this letter asking for you to not proceed with coal on the eastern slopes. Can you answer that? Can you answer why we have...
I am so excited to answer that question. I have to tell you, as a registered trapper from Northern Alberta, I have a couple of snowmobiles. You guys have snowmobiles down here? Yeah. I also have a couple of jet boats because I love fishing, so a canoe and stuff. If you want to come out fishing, just outside the oil sands is a great opportunity to do that. I agree with the lady. Do you want to hear what we have to say or not? Because I agree with her. I think outdoor recreation is a very big part of our future, and I think we've got a great opportunity to do that. In fact, I've been talking to a coal mine that's finished, that's being reclaimed up just outside of Edmonton. And those folks want to donate it to the people of Edmonton so they can use it for a recreational area, so they can use the tailings pond that's been cleaned up for fishing and for swimming because the community wants to use it. And I think from that particular mine that was mined for about 60 years, it's now closed, we can have some really good facilities to help people with recreation. Because I agree with the young lady that spoke, in Northern Alberta especially, and Southern Alberta, we have some of the most incredible, beautiful places in the planet. We need to protect them. We need to make sure that people have the opportunity to use them and enjoy them, and I agree with her.
The mountaintop removal or open pit.
Decorum. I'd like to get through every question here. The only way to do that is to hear the question.
You know, guys, I'm just going to underscore what R.J. Sigurdsson said earlier. There is a large community that wants to ban the ranching and eating meat. There's a large community that wants to do that. And I can tell you, we are standing foursquare behind our agriculture community to prevent that from happening. There is also, our federal government wants to put limits on fertilizer use so that we can start reducing the amount of food production. We are fighting that tooth and nail. You need to understand that, to underscore RJ's point, that as soon if we are not prepared to look and find middle ground solutions to allow for our industries to proceed while reducing the environmental footprint, you're going to find that different industries become the next on the hit list. And we do not want that to happen. So I would just say we are looking this evening to find more that we can do to mediate the concerns, identify the concerns and address them. But banning industries is just not something our government's going to do, because environmentalists like Stephen Guilbeault, and we are certainly not going to allow for him to dictate the future of our projects.
Your name, your question.
Hi, my name is Paige, and my question is actually actually about the amount of water that's required to extricate coal from the ground. Studies have shown that between 250 liters and 750 liters of water are required for 1 ton of coal production. On the Alberta government website, it states that the population of Alberta grew by approximately 3.5%, which means that we are requiring more water. There's currently 35 rivers that have a water shortage advisory, including the Old Man and too many more that I could name right here. The smoke on my way here had an advisory that I should stay indoors. We're requiring more water, and you're asking to give our water to mine. I don't understand how that fits. How can we have
I really appreciate that question, and I know just especially over the last number of months as we're doing our water availability engagements, obviously water quality is very linked to that, especially in southern Alberta. And so I do just want to be clear that, and I talked about this a little bit in Lethbridge for those of you who were at the Lethbridge Water Town Hall. The Old Man River Basin is a closed basin, so there is a small amount of water that is still able to be allocated. It's a Crown reservation, and that water, no, hang on and let me finish, okay? For those of you who came here, and you know what, if you don't like the information, it doesn't mean it's not true. The fact of the matter, when it comes to this Crown reservation, the vast majority of that water is specifically reserved for municipal and population growth as well as for agriculture and irrigation, given how important ag and irrigation is for southern Alberta. And so there is a very, very small amount of water that has been held back in that Crown reservation. It's the Old Man Basin Order that holds that water in place, but it is primarily held, like I said, for municipal and population growth and agriculture. Now, I don't have the details of, we just received some of the details around the proposed project. And I've always said, you know, when it comes to hypotheticals, we should really just deal in fact. And so when it comes to this amount of water, the Grassy Mountain project, the company applied for an allocation of just under 600,000 cubic meters. The allocation is equivalent to 0.00025% of the total water in the Old Man Basin. So for comparison, that volume is less than the average water used to irrigate 3 to 4 quarter sections of ag land. And that's assuming a 12-inch allocation. That water that they are proposing to use by this specific project would primarily come from precipitation that falls within the project boundary and then would be collected and managed on site. Use of this water is licensed under the Water Act, of course, and would be applied against the province's industrial water allocation. That allocation is separate from those assigned to ag, municipalities, or other users, ensuring the project doesn't affect access to water. And you know what, that's similar to what we see in other industries. I mean, we're also addressing oil sands mine water right now and how water is treated and encouraging reuse and as very limited freshwater use as possible. And that's going to be part of our Water Act changes and the regulation changes that we see following the engagements that we've been doing over the last year as well.
Thank you, Minister. I'll call the next question. Your name and your question, sir.
Hi, my name is Lee. 70 to 80% of Albertans don't want coal mines on the eastern slopes, and that they don't want it. Why aren't you listening to Albertans?
Where'd you get that number?
From the Coal Initiative
We're going
survey.
to allow to ask the questions, and then we'll allow for a response. Thank you. Please go ahead with your question.
72% of Crow's Nest past residents voted to. Those citizens organized in that way to express themselves in that way is probably because they feel shouted down when they come to forums like this and don't have their own clients represented. So we need to get information from all sides, address the legitimate concerns, and I believe we have with the input that we've had from Albertans. That's why, again, the policy changes that we put forward came from that consultation. And we're looking forward to seeing how the regulator holds the companies to account as they put their applications forward.
Because this gentleman didn't get to his question before I interrupted, so I'm just going to let him finish with his question, if that's okay.
I believe it's actually in the other MD. It's not, the coal mine wouldn't be in that MD. There's over 250,000 people that depend on that water. It is one river. It joins I can't think of it now, but it becomes South Saskatchewan, so all the way to Medicine Hat. I'm just concerned about water. I canoe the river every year. My question is actually for Brian Jean. You sent a letter to Premier Kenney in 2021 condemning coal mining, and you essentially you said that you don't want coal mining. You have to ask Albertans what they want, and you're not doing that. And then I also wanted to say that the Coal Modernization Initiative was released on a Friday, and you said in your letter, don't put out policy changes on the long weekend of a Friday, and that's exactly what you did with coal mining.
I appreciate your question, and I think it's very clear that I did take a position against coal because it was being done wrong. We're doing it right. That's why it's called the Modernization Initiative. You know, as the minister said, you might not like the answer, but it is the truth. We can do coal mining, we can balance water, we can make sure that things are done properly. It wasn't done in the past the proper way. That's why, after talking to my friend here, breaking bread with him some time ago, 3 years ago or 4 years ago now, I told him I wouldn't do open pit mining in the foothills. We're not allowing open pit mining in the foothills. He pointed to a mountain and said, they're planning on taking that mountaintop off. And I said, they're not going to take that mountaintop off. And you know what? The rules say exactly that. They're not taking the mountaintop off, and they're not having any open pit mines in these slopes. I kept my word, just like I stood up against oil companies in northern Alberta about water intake. And you can check the record, it's clear. I stood up against them against Stephen Harper's government, which I was a part of and was not popular at the time. But I did that because they were doing it wrong, just like we were doing it wrong on coal. This government's going to do it right.
Why did you release on Friday? A long weekend.
Thank you for your question. We'll move on. Your name and your question, please, ma'am. Great. I'll hang on to it for you. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's okay.
My name is Carolyn, and I have a question for Premier Smith just on the importance of transparency to your government. So on Saturday, I read an article in the Globe and Mail entitled "Coal Mines on Alberta's Eastern Slopes Are Poisoning Fish Studies," population says. And about 3 paragraphs in, it talks about the government release of the report on May 27th, but then later says that the scientists who authored the report were not made available to speak to reporters. So why would the government share the report online but not let its authors speak to reporters to ask questions?
To answer that. So typically what happens in government, and those reports are made public, they are published on open data, and then typically it is me or a government spokesperson that speaks to government policies from media. And so oftentimes when the questions come into our office, they're typically looking for a comment from me. That has been pretty common practice, I would say, over the last number of decades. We certainly didn't change that at all. If anything, Premier has an expectation that we are even more available to media all of the time. And certainly my office always is. But typically it would be people who, every department has people who've been identified as a government spokesperson. And oftentimes they come to us.
But the questions are about science, not about policy, so the scientists should be answering them.
Yeah, and any department also has officials that would be, typically they're trained and selected by the department as official spokespeople for the department, and so they make that decision, we don't make that decision, but we often comment, and then if they need an expert of a certain area within the department and our communications area, they choose spokespeople who speak on behalf of the government all of the time. And so I don't have any selection in that. They probably have a process for media training and availability and things like that. And so they make that choice, but we always make people available to speak to the media about numbers and reports that are made public.
Thank you for that. I just want to let everyone know we have about 30 minutes left in this Q&A, so we are just going to try and get through the questions here. Your name and your question, please.
My name is Brandon. Hi, Brian. I have a question about royalties. You mentioned that we were receiving less before, and we will be receiving more in the future. What will be the return rate to Albertans?
Good question. You know, it's sort of like that question that was asked about releasing the report. You know, we're still modernizing, we're still consulting, we're still... You want to listen up? I know this for sure, that the royalty rates are too low. I don't know what the answer is. I've had a competitive analysis done. I've had a competitive analysis done across the world. And I know that we are going to have some of the more robust royalty rates on the planet because, frankly, if they're going to do this, if they're going to have the ability to take our assets in this situation, they're going to pay for it. And these companies, folks, by the way, everybody raise their cell phone. They're made in China. Okay, we don't want to see that anymore. Yes, they were. Your parts from your cell phone and your computer and everything else that you use and want are made in a place that they can cut it off any moment. We have to think about this, folks. We have to think about it, how we do things and how we do things better. And we are going to do exactly that. Royalty rates, we made from one mine last year, I think, $200 million. The truth is, it depends on where it is, depends on what it brings in, depends on the quality of it, but it will be significantly higher than what it has been in the past.
Just to add to that, the thing that is challenging about coal is that the way the province developed, they allowed a lot of the coal to be held in freehold mineral rights. Whereas, and that's part of the reason why it's been such a complicated policy, is that when we own the rights, as we do for the vast majority of oil and gas, we can make a decision to lease or not. When a private owner makes a decision to sell that forward, as they have over generations, that makes it more complicated to not only figure out how to respect those property rights, but also how to tax them. So we do have a freehold tax that we have on the very small number of oil and gas rights that are owned in freehold, but we'd have to look at that as a bit of a guidepost to how to deal with coal.
Thank you for that. Your name and your question, sir. I'll hold it for you.
My name is Chris Spearman. I have 20 questions because I've written them previously and never got an answer from this government. But, so, many of the issues that are, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions tonight, and I appreciate going forward, but it's about the lack of transparency and the lack of accountability from the government and from the coal companies. A year ago, I attended a selenium information meeting in Blairmore on June the 12th, and I asked questions that I had asked previously to Atrium Coal. And I asked them about how they were going to control issues like selenium. I said, is there any place in the world where a municipality has been able to remove excess selenium from the water? Give me an example. And they couldn't. And they said they would get back to me. And I never heard from them for 5 months. They asked me to write my questions down. I sent them in. I didn't hear for 5 months from them. And then I just got an acknowledgement and said Northback would respond. I've never heard back from Northback. So now, I say I've written similar questions to Mr. Jean about name a municipality in the world that's been able to remove excess selenium from the water. No response. 2 letters. I've written 2 letters to the Premier listing several of my questions. But
You're 30 seconds.
Okay, all right. I'm going to boil it down to one thing. I'm going to send my 20 questions in and hope to get answers from you. But the UCP government in 2019 didn't have a mandate to open up the coal mines. The UCP government elected in 2023 didn't have a mandate to open up the coal mines. Could you commit to us, as quickly as you did to the separatists, that you would hold a referendum on coal mining in Alberta and abide by the results?
Chris, I think you know how citizen-initiated referendum works. You have the ability to, and we did lower the threshold to make it easier for anyone to put a question to the people. You could sign up 177,000 people, and then we can put it on a referendum, absolutely. So you feel free to go ahead and do that. Absolutely.
And you would abide by the results.
Absolutely. Well, look, I mean, sure, because what would happen in a yes-no referendum is that there'd be a yes side and there'd be a no side, and Albertans would have to decide if paying $14 billion, instead of paying it on schools and hospitals and roads, to ban an industry, is what they want to do, or whether they think that a reasonable amount of mines can go forward so that we can generate a few $100 million per year. That would happen in a referendum. I encourage you, by all means, because I believe in citizen-initiated referendum, I believe in democracy. I strongly encourage you. The new rules, I believe, are going to be proclaimed as of July 1st. You have a 120-day period to gather the signatures. The threshold is the 10% of the previous voter turnout in the last election. It's 177,000 people. So I encourage you to go ahead and do that, and let's have the debate. But when it comes to the question that you have, I think that Brian answered the question maybe a different way, is let's change the practices so selenium doesn't get in the water in the first place. And that's why underground mining, no open pit mine, no mountaintop removal is one of the ways to mitigate on that.
And Chris, I apologize. I usually get back to everybody. Here's my business card. Here's my
Thank you. You lost the email, Chris.
Thank you. Your name and your question, please.
My name is Pauline Rosnicker. The AER, Premier Smith, the AER has stated that the cumulative impacts of this project's trajectory are outside of the scope of the approval decision. However, the overwhelming concern from citizens has demanded it should be otherwise. Specifically, the projected environmental impacts must be the deciding factor to not proceed with the project. Can you speak with full transparency about why you are ignoring vital information, devaluing environmental and social cumulative impacts, and prioritizing economic prosperity of only a few over your duty to balance the values of all citizens and your responsibility to safeguard Alberta's resources for current Albertans and future generations of Albertans?
Well, I believe that that companies can develop resources and minimize impact on the environment because they've seen it. I trust, because we have had industries going back over 100 years who have been able to do that, and we get better and better at environmental management, and we're going to continue to get better and better at it. Grassy Mountain, in particular, they've identified this site because let's remember it's an unrestored site from a previous mine operation. It's got a variety of safety hazards already that they want to be able to address in the process of development. They've made many redesigns to the project to address the issues that we're hearing about tonight. And as a result, they've narrowed the scope of the project. So it would produce about 3.75 million tons of steel-making coal annually, and then conduct progressive reclamation. I think the company is hearing the concerns that are being raised. They're responding to it in the application, and it will be up to the AER to see if they're able to proceed with addressing the concerns and the policies that we put in place.
Are you speaking for the corporation?
Thank you for that. I'll take the next question. How are you? Mind introducing yourself to them and ask your question?
My name is Don McRae. I'm a resident of Pincher Creek. I am a retired Syncrude worker. I lived in Fort McMurray for 28 years. I was fortunate to work for a well-being oil company. There were several meetings that went on saying no to the oil sands. I would like to see Alberta today without the oil sands. I live in Pincher Creek. I would like to know how much money is generated for this southern part of Alberta by the miners that need to go to the coal mines to work in Sparwood, Elkford, and in that area. Is there a dollar figure? I believe Pincher Creek has at least 500 residents working in the coal mines in BC. Now this mine in the past has nothing to do with me, but it's good for the economy. If we didn't need jobs, we could all sit back and relax. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very well said.
All right. Your name and your question.
Hi, I'm Brenda, and I don't know if you remember me, Danielle, but in 2022 on your pre-election town hall meetings, I followed you from Sundre up to Rocky Mountain House, and we spoke one-on-one, and which I have on record, and I explained to you that the UCP had secretly sold off in 2020 over 300,000 acres in Category 2 in Clearwater County. Okay, and you were very concerned about it, and I appreciated that. And so then you told me there was a couple in the south that you're interested in because the people in the south wanted it. But when I said, we talked about that they were application coal mines that were there, and they were converted secretly into applications. They were turned into active coal leases. And so I explained that to you, and we talked about that. You said they should be easy to get back because they're just leases, and they're only paying $3.50 a hectare for the last how many years. You said the freehold would cost more, and we'd have to look into that, and you would get back to me. I asked you 3 times. I said, do you agree with mining in Category 2? And you said, quote, no, coal mining should have never been permitted in Category 2. My question is, now Valerie Black Eagle, who's suing us for 1.6 billion, they're sitting on the Corkscrew Mountain, 161 square kilometers on Corkscrew Mountain, ready just west of Caroline to mine. They think they're going to be the first one, and they got their exploration permit. And I want to hear from you because you told me none in Category 2, and I need to know why you're doing this.
Well, look, I mean, I said the same thing when I was first asked about this. It was a mistake to send out leases in those on those lands, because I think we had under the 1976 coal policy a pretty good compromise. And I think that there was an error made, and it was an error that was made under the NDP. So, the fact of the matter is, when government then issues the leases, now we created a liability. So yes, I mentioned earlier, we have several companies that we are in negotiations with to settle so that we can take the leases back. It's not going to be free to do that. It's going to be fairly costly to do that. And I'm telling you, yes, we're working on that. And it takes 2 to tango. No, we didn't open the door. The ND's opened the door.
We've allowed for the question. Let's hear the answer, please.
I'm just telling you, yes, that if we are able to get settlements with these companies, one of the things, we certainly wouldn't settle with them and then allow them to keep the leases. That wouldn't make any sense. If we settle with them, they will have to transfer the leases and they'd have to transfer the freehold. That's the negotiation that we're in right now. And we hope that we're able to do that with a large number of the leases so that we don't have to have this conversation all over the province. That being said, it was always, these 4 advanced mines were always identified to have a different process. And Grassy, Tent, and then the 2 up north were ones that were identified to go through with an AER process. They are on Category 4 lands. That was something, there should have been an expectation that was the deal that the prior governments, going back to Lougheed, had made with the industry. So I want to see if we can be respectful of those 4 advanced projects going forward. Any new would have to follow the new policy. No open pit mines, no mountaintop removal, for the underground mining techniques. But do know that once we get to a settlement and are able to announce it, you will know. And as part of that settlement, we would be transferring those leases back to the Crown so that they would be held for the people of Alberta.
So you're telling me again, no mining on category 2?
That would be my preference.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right,
I'll hold you to it.
Thank you. We have about 15 minutes left in our Q&A. Your name and your question, sir.
I'm Cornelius Correa. I worked for Tech Resources for 18 years, recently retired. I've got 40 years of experience, international coal mining, coke, iron making, and steel making. So I was part of Tech's team to assess coal deposits throughout the world. So a bit of context. The first one was Mozambique. Benga Riversdale were there. They sold it for $4 billion to Rio Tinto. It was not the value by far. It was basically fraud. They sold it to the Steel Authority of India for $50 million within 2 years. Now they moved to Alberta, yeah? And they started this Grassy Mountain project. More context, the Japanese had big coal mining interests there up until the late 70s. They moved out because the coal quality was inadequate for the modern iron making industry, and they had better, higher quality in the Elk Valley. That's what happened. So they shut them all down because the coal, and Japanese are polite, but they called it shit coal. So now...
Sorry, your question, sir?
So the question now is, I was key expert witness in October 2020 for the AER hearing on Grassy, and I proved the coal quality is inadequate, is far below the Elk Valley. Already to start with, and after the first 2 years, it collapsed. So there will be no money for remediation. It will be a swing mine. There won't be value-added, long-lasting jobs. And Gina just wants her $700 million back. She unwisely invested to spin it off to other investors, or better, sue the government, which they're compromising.
Thank you.
Can you explain a little bit more about why it is you would say that the quality is so different between here and the mines on the other side? What is the factor that you look at?
Yes, it's on the other side of the range. So the coal quality there's fault systems. It's just an inferior quality compared to the Elk Valley. That's why the coal mining moved to Elk Valley. As soon as they also got the techniques to mine in the higher Elk Valley regions. That's why the coal is significantly less in quality. If you look at the coke making properties, the chemistry, the carbon forms, the petrography, it doesn't make good, strong coke the way the Elk Valley will make it, so the economic value is significantly less.
Could this be why, though, the company has narrowed the seam that they're looking at? They're looking at only going after the highest value coal. Could that be part of the reason? Is there a chance that there would be, I don't know enough about the uniformity of the deposit, is there a chance that a smaller project would have the same quality?
So they have one coal seam which is of slightly better quality. It's still quite a bit below the Elk Valley, and also it's less, about 80 or 75% was in the valley. Yeah, but it's only seam 1. So what's left of seam 1 will be gone after the first 2 years. And that's what he misrepresented in the presentation at the AER hearing. So the coal quality will collapse after the initial 2 years.
Next question, they're wasting time on you, man.
Premier, if it's okay with you...
There's no economic viability.
They're not interested.
Premier, if it's okay with you, I'd like to set up a meeting with this individual. We'll collect a card, and then we can possibly set up for more information from him as well.
Yep.
So yeah, if everyone's okay with that. Thank you, sir, for that. I think I have some staff at the back that we can also connect with too, so thank you. I'll ask for the next person in line for their question. Sir, your name and your question.
Hi, it's Curtis. And my
if I may
question
just to go back to one of the earlier questions that was asked about category 2.
Look at the line up.
Premier, I'm happy to give you the floor to answer the question on the category too.
Well, I think that what the gentleman mentioned was important because part of what you see in British Columbia is they have existing infrastructure. This is why it's very difficult to develop all through the eastern slopes, is that you have to develop roads and you have to develop additional infrastructure to take it out. That's why I think that grassy has always been the preferred spot because there's at least infrastructure there, but it's why it's so much more difficult to build the further in that you go in the mountain.
Thank you. All right, Curtis, your question.
Hi, I'm super surprised to see you guys here in front of all of us who are very concerned about this issue. You'd probably rather be watching the game in Florida right now, but maybe tickets are...
I'm waiting eagerly for your coal-related question.
Well, we gotta build up to it. We gotta build up.
You have about 30 seconds or less.
You're gonna cut me down? Okay, that's cool. Did you know that the Koocanusa Lake is fed by Fording River, the Elk River, contaminated by Teck's project? There is no way to clean that up. There is no way to remove selenium from the water once it's in there. It is in there. You are going to destroy pristine natural habitat for Gina. Gina is your pal. And all of us here, we are the enemy. Like, this is not a Republican gala. Like, I'm surprised you're even here. My question is, do you believe in Canada? I'll wait for the answer.
I don't know, I didn't hear a question.
Okay, I'm happy to...
Yes, the question was, do I believe in Canada? I think that more Alberta is a better Canada. Better Alberta is a better Canada. Do you not believe that? I also believe that we can stop water from getting into selenium, and sir, with respect, I'd be happy to provide to you the information, but the BC government is requiring people to take selenium out of the water in BC because of the situation.
How?
The evidence is true. They have a fake, they spent a ton of money and they're going through the water and they're taking it out.
How? How do they do it?
Scientists, but as I said to you, I'd be happy to get back to you with that information.
How?
All right, everyone.
By email.
We have about 5 minutes left. I don't believe we're going to get through everyone's questions. So your name and your question, please.
Sorry, but I think you've got plenty of time for everyone up there to speak. I think you should at least respect the people that have come here.
I believe this is a wonderful information, and I'd like to thank the ministers and the premier for being here today to answer all of these questions. So your question, ma'am.
So my question. I'm not sure if you're aware, but recently there was a landmark decision in the BC Supreme Court against teal cedar products. So teal had a contract, and the BC government protected the land over the resource. And the Supreme Court of BC ruled in favor of the government. So I don't know, you seem to be able to bring court cases against individual people in this province, like for example, the whistleblower Athana Metsanopoulos. You've brought two very strong legal firms against her, and yet I feel like you can't protect Albertans from this foreign coal baron. Like, you're so big on protecting Alberta. Why don't you please protect Alberta from
You know, I think the man that spent 20 odd years at Syncrude said it best. We are protecting Albertans. We're making sure we take care of the air, the water, the earth, the plants, the forest, and your jobs. So we can stay in Alberta and work and raise a family here. We need jobs and we need an economy, and that's how we protect Albertans. Making sure we balance it and we're
Yeah, I just missed her last
The next question, ma'am. Your name and your question.
My name is Pat Conway. I am a grandma. I'm a grandma from Calgary. And the best thing that came out of all of this, when all the war started over the saving our water and our environment, was the fact that you probably noticed Albertans from all over, all walks of life, all political parties and interests, we joined together. And we stood up and we said no to no coal mining. No coal mining at all.
Do you
That
have a
was
question,
nothing-
ma'am?
Do you have a question? We have a couple people.
I'll hang on to it for you. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. Yes, as you sit there dressed in blue, which is representative for most of us about water, I would like to know, what are you doing supporting foreign interests over our water, the businesses, the ranchers here who are talking about not being able to plant vegetables and eat them, not just because of the selenium, because every foot that they cut down trees and make roads is making dust, which our wind can stop, which, Rebecca, every single study and view about air quality cannot stop that wind. So, Premier Smith, why aren't you standing up for Albertans and not just the 8,000 who voted for you when you had your premiership review? The rest of us.
Thank you for your question.
I am grateful that our premier stands up for Albertans every single day. And when it comes to you know what, our premier stands up for Alberta, our major industries, our way of life, every single day. Our premier loves Alberta, and I know this about her. No question. Absolutely not. And she loves Albertans, and she loves Alberta to the point that she travels the province day after day, month after month, has done this for the last, 2.5, 3, 4 years? It feels like more, it's been 3. But she doesn't stop You know what? Our premier loves Alberta, and she loves Albertans, and she spends every waking moment of her time traveling this province from corner to corner, hearing their feedback, listening to their ideas, hearing their concerns, so that we can try to make this an even better place to live, to work, to raise your family. And when she is not doing that, she is traveling the world talking about what Alberta has to offer. Now, to answer your question about dust, and this has been raised, we do monitor air quality at more than 130 permanent stations throughout the province. We use that data to make sure that air quality status and it also informs our management actions, as I mentioned before. We regularly check air quality against regional, provincial, and federal standards. The impact, specifically of coal, and I know you mentioned also dust and transportation, we see this again, not just in one industry, but in all of our industries. I've seen this in a number of files as well. It also depends on the magnitude, the type of mining, the proximity of communities and sensitive ecosystems. And those are all absolutely considerations that we make when we're looking at dust and air quality. And I know I've talked also a lot about water tonight as well.
Thank you for that. It is 7:30, but the Premier has graciously said that we are going to work through the end of this line, so thank you, Premier. I'll have the next person come up with their question. No, I would like to... Excuse me, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Sir, your name and your question.
Travis Hilliard, I want to thank all of you for being here, coming into the Lion's Den. I know it's not easy, but thank you. It appears to be that there's a lot of out of sight, out of mind. Believe me, this will get done when there's no actual studies to prevent selenium from leaking in. I don't understand why you want us to believe you when that's not proven by peer-reviewed studies yet. Mr. Sigurdsson, you do say that you want to protect farmers and agriculture down here. So why did the Premier have a moratorium against green energy, which could provide agrivoltaics, provide more water retention, reduce droughts in here, as we've heard previously? So why are you picking sides with coal and not with billions of dollars that have since exited the province with investments?
A lot of landowners who want to ban wind turbines and solar panels. Yeah. And we're not going to do that either.
We did.
No, we did not. Guess what we did? We set rules around an agriculture first policy so that wind turbines and solar panels cannot be put on property that has class 1 and class 2 agriculture value, and they have to put aside money so that they clean it up at the end of life. And that's the responsible thing to do, is that when you have these kind of landowner conflicts with industry coming in, you have to find a balance. You have to find a way to address the legitimate concerns, have setback areas. We've got an 800-meter setback of turbines from an individual home in response to the concerns that we've heard from landowners. And that's the balance that we have. We have the balance on every single issue. That's just another example. If you start banning industries, there will always be a crowd of people who will come into a community center in favor of banning an industry, and we don't think that that's our job. Our job is to find a way to address the legitimate concerns, and there's many legitimate concerns that are being raised here, and we're going to address those and make sure that the regulatory process holds them to a very high standard.
Where's Gina?
RJ, would you like to comment?
I do have to comment on that one. This is something that we worked really heavily on, and trust me, when we talked about the moratorium, I had a endless line of farmers and ranchers approaching me saying that they were very uncomfortable with the amount of prime agriculture that was being lost, and that there wasn't proper reclamation strategies put in place, that there was no weed control proper that was planned, and that it was, to them, their words, the Wild West, and there needed to be a pause so that there could be proper regulations put in place, and understanding that, and I've said this many times, I just came back traveling internationally promoting Alberta agriculture. The fact is, by 2050 mid-century, the demand for food is going to increase by anywhere from 55 to 65%. That's a conservative estimate. The only way we're going to continue to be able to ensure that we can feed domestically at home, deal with food affordability and food security, is the investments this government is making around irrigation. Like I mentioned, $933 million in irrigation modernization and projects. That means we can irrigate the same amount of land with this less allocations. It's expansions into more storage like Ardley and Harrimore. It's maintaining the irrigation rehabilitation program and others that are so incredibly important. When it came to renewables that were happening, it was time that a pause happened. There was too many impacts happening to lost farmland and neighbor conflicts, and the pause was very important to make sure we have proper regulatory structure in place.
Thank you for that. All of the next, your name and your question, sir.
My name's Joe. I'm a 20-year coal miner.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks for coming to our beautiful corner of the province. I work in BC, and I bring all my money back into Alberta. And I love me some Alberta beef. My question is a bit of a two-part. Will the stringent selenium management standards that we have painstakingly developed in the Elk Valley over the last 15 years that in fact do work, but take time to bring down already elevated levels, become standards for mining in Alberta too? Things such as saturated rock fills, downstream selenium extraction plants, suboxic layering on spoils, and lining of blast holes to prevent nitrate and nitrite leaching. Also, will dust suppression technology such as the dust suppression used at the Neptune Coal Terminal in West Vancouver become standard practice in Alberta too?
Thank you for the question.
I did.
Fantastic, Joe. Thanks for coming here, and appreciate the work you do and the hard work you do for your family and for the province of Alberta. I really do. It means a lot. And having you come here today, you know, what I've heard clearly is there's a yes and there's a no, and thank you, Joe, for bringing the yes. I think it's important. You're absolutely right. There are places around the world that do it better than we do it, and they've done it the hard way. Well, the good news is we're not going to do it the hard way anymore. We're going to make sure that we don't allow them to put selenium in the water in the first place, and the places that do have selenium, they're going to clean it up. And you know what, folks? Not every... How you just heard from somebody how it's done. There's 4 or 5 different methods that are currently being used. Downstream extraction method they use in the Elk River right now, don't they, Joe?
There's 8,000 of us that take great pride in our environmental stewardship.
Yes.
And we're going to do better than they did, folks, just like we do in everything else.
Your name and your question, sir.
Thanks for being here. It's been quite a time. My name is Jim Byrne. I was a professor at the University of Lethbridge for 40 years studying water. I started the Water Institute in 1987. I published papers that said climate change is going to reduce our water supply from spring snowmelt by about 50% by 2050. You know what? We're ahead on that right now. Our water supply is shrinking rapidly. Okay? I'm concerned about some things that have been said today, and I do have a question. I'll finish up. Brian, and I like Joe. I talked to him in the line. Nice fellow, okay? But Joe, the referee literature does not agree that BC is doing a good job on selenium in BC. They are not doing it. It's not happening. They got $6 to $10 billion in liability. Brian, you talked about oil sands. We've only reclaimed 7% of oil sands. We've got hundreds of billions of dollars in liabilities. We've got hundreds of billions of dollars in liabilities for abandoned for abandoned oil wells, okay? So we don't trust you. Forgive us, and please don't dump this on the NDP, because you guys have been governing as conservatives since 1972. They had 4 years, okay? I'll get to my question. Here comes
running out of time.
Yeah, and here comes my question. So I can tell you the selenium removal techniques are not well refined, and they're not supported by referee literature. And a lot of what you said today is not supported by the science, objective science referee literature. Minister Sigurdsson, I do appreciate you mentioning it, okay? But it's not supported by the referee literature. You need some really important independent reviews, and I'd like to see how you're going to do that, because you don't have good science here.
The oil sands, but I will say we did make some changes last year to the Mine Financial Security Program to ensure that there is more dollars in that fund for reclamation, and under the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act, coal mine operators are responsible for remediating and reclaiming their mines. We require them to pay financial security to the AER at the start of a mining project, and then those cleanup costs are not paid by taxpayers, but instead paid by the proponent. That's our polluter pay principle. And so we have worked to make some changes to that program. More to come on oil sands, but as I've said, we set the standards. It is up to those proponents to prove to us that they can meet them.
And I would say that what we have done is we have a mandatory spend for companies to pay down the liability that has been accumulated in oil and gas. They've paid $700 million a year for the last 2 years. It's going to continue. We think it's a $30 billion liability, so within 30 years, we hope that will be paid down to zero. But we're applying that same principle to every type of industrial use that has an impact on the land. That's why we're putting reclamation sinking funds in place for solar and wind. We have the sinking funds as well that we're putting in place.
My name is Bonnie Kaslarine, and my credentials are I'm a daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter of coal miners from the Crow's Nest Pass. I would like to thank the panel for having the courage to deal with the crowd. And I have the floor. And I feel that you are owed an apology for the abhorrent behavior of some of the people in the audience. Okay. Here's my question. This is a question for you all to ponder. Why did the citizens of the Crow's Nest Pass vote 72% in favor of Grassy Mountain? No, they don't.
Excuse me, we've allowed questions from both sides. We're going to allow this lady to finish her question. Thank you.
It's not even 1% of the province. Come on.
Okay, excuse me. The minority here has the floor. We have listened. We feel that
this project, which is a category 4, by the way, not category 2 or 3, that this project is going to be done in a responsible manner. I, for one, would not be standing here in support, nor would the other members that I'm involved with, if we thought that our community was going to be jeopardized. It's going to have a domino effect for everybody. And I don't mean the water, I mean the economic and everything else. Pincher, the crows.
Sorry, ma'am, your question, dear. Yeah.
Okay, my question again. Why do you think 72% of the citizens of the Crow's Nest Pass voted yes for coal? Thank you.
Because maybe they don't want to go to BC to find a job?
Ma'am, your name and your question, please.
Renee Ashton. I'm from the PN Nation, and I'm a proud Blackfoot woman. I have some friends here too. And I don't remember leadership voting yes for you guys to do this. I don't understand why you are doing this. We have children, future children in our world here that are suffering. And now they're going to suffer more because of this mine that's going through. You don't understand. That settlement is going all the way from that mountain, all the way down to Saskatchewan. That is poison. We're poisoning our children.
Do you have a question now?
That's my question.
No.
You know, I appreciate you coming forward. I think one thing that there is an opportunity here, first of all, to have Indigenous participation in coal mines, in oil and gas mines, in industry, so we get it right, because they're right, we need to do it right, and we're going to do it right. We're going to protect the water. We're going to make sure we do that, and we have full consultation with the Indigenous folks. The mine has done that, as they are doing it right across the province, or they don't have the ability to go forward.
Thank you. Your name and your question, ma'am.
It's Leslie Scrimshaw, and my question is for the Minister of Agriculture. I'm concerned because I don't think there's enough water in our area to support another thirsty industry. Last year, basically the river ran dry. So, I mean, we were getting our water trucked in. So I'm concerned about how do you maintain a water supply for those 56,000 people who rely in southern Alberta who work in agriculture. You know, we want to protect those jobs too.
And definitely we do. And our irrigation districts that stepped up and went into water sharing agreements to make sure that we shared the water across was extremely important. And a huge thanks out to those farmers and ranchers that really stepped up in those negotiations at the front end of it. This is why we're investing so much in irrigation and water storage. There, for a long time, we've gotten away from looking at the larger projects that we know are necessary to support the growth in this province, both in agriculture, but as well as industry and our municipalities. That's why in our last budget, we are moving forward with feasibility studies on Hartley and Armor, and we need to look at every possibility to continue to expand storage within the province of Alberta, so that we can continue to grow with industry and with population growth. And that's why we're putting so many hundreds of millions of dollars towards these types of investments that are going to be crucial to provide the stability that we know is necessary to make sure the water is there for our farmers and ranchers, but as well our municipalities.
Yeah, and to echo what RJ just said, we work really closely with Ag and Irrigation on the work that we're doing to manage water availability. And as I said earlier today, I know availability and quality are two different things, but they are linked, because when we look at availability of water, agriculture, and human health and safety, growing municipalities, and supporting human population and communities. That's our top priority when it comes to water use, especially in the Old Man, which is a closed basin. But we are also looking at ways to, as RJ said, increase our storage capacity and be better able to manage the water we have, but also to use less fresh water where we can and encourage recycling practices in all of our major industries. So this is very much a top of mind issue for us, and we've been engaging on it, so much so that we split the engagement because I didn't want to go out with any preconceived notions from a department. We went out to ask Albertans what matters most, and then we did a second round engagements to fine-tune any legislative or regulatory or policy changes that we're going to be making.
We better come back.
And the minister, when we did get water restrictions, she brought to cabinet a change in policy for prioritization to put people first and animals first. The work that she's doing now is for us to find a way to take used water for industrial use so that we're not drawing fresh water out, and so she's going to be doing a lot of work on that. We're also trying to create new water rights by being able to have more reservoirs so we can hold more water. We're actually, even in drought, we're allowing more water to flow through than we need to by law, and so if we can find better ways to manage that, that'll also protect the food producers. And I would just say, we know agriculture has been under attack by those who want to ban fertilizers, those who want to build solar and wind places where it's high-use agriculture land, and we want to, whether it's net zero power regs, net zero vehicle regs, we know that the industry is under threat, and I've asked R.J. Sigurdson, as our agriculture minister, to break through a right to farm bill, either in the fall or in the spring, and I'd love for all of you to give him feedback about what you'd like to see in that, because we know that we've got to put the producers of this province first. Thanks so much for being out this evening.
All right, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's question and answer. I appreciate your attendance. We will not be taking any further questions at this time, but I will invite each of the ministers and Premier to provide closing remarks if they so wish. Nope, all right. So I just want to thank Premier Smith, Minister Schultz, Minister Jean, and Minister Sigurdson for taking the time to be here for addressing the concerns raised today. At this point, our scheduled program is complete. I kindly ask that everyone begin to make their way out of the venue in an orderly fashion so staff can begin the necessary cleanup. Thank you again, and please travel safely.
That's like